Hello everyone, my name is Ansar Ahmed. I work with BMC Discovery support team. I'm specialized in BMC Discovery, Helix Discovery, and the integration of BMC Discovery with other products. In this webinar, I'm going to talk on how we can enrich the discovery data. Let's get started. Here is the agenda for today. We will start with the discovery overview. We'll then talk about the impact of data in regards to the user permissions. We'll talk more on the software versioning mechanism and how it works. Later, we will talk about how we can resolve the software support details of the software instances. We will talk more on this one later in this webinar. Later, we will talk about the deep database discovery. We will then see the best practices and recommendations that will help us in enriching the discovery data. At the end, we will see what is the importance of knowledge updates. Let's start with the discovery overview. Let's say we have two servers. One is Windows servers, another one is Linux or Unix based server. We have discovery or the outpost that performs the scans on both the servers. On the Windows, we perform PowerShell or WMI. On the Linux, we run Linux or Unix scripts. Once we perform the scans, we get the discovered data. This data is then inferred as a host node. Once the host node is discovered and the related processes are also discovered, its respective patterns are triggered and we get the software instances. Once the software instances are discovered, including its version, the support details are discovered. We will talk more on the support details later in this webinar. Now let's start with the first demo of this webinar. In this one, we are going to scan one Linux server with one user which is having minimal permissions, and then we will scan the same Linux server with a user having higher privilege, and then we will see the difference. Let's start with the demo. I've configured the credentials for this particular Linux server. Let's start with the scan. Add new run, put the IP address of the scan, appliance, let's say test Linux, first scan, and initiate the scan. As we don't need cloud detection, let's disable them. Let's start the scan. The scan is now completed. Let's see the result. Let's click on the host. We can see 5 software instances have been discovered. Here we can see in the hardware network storage section, the serial number details are missing. So we will talk more on that and the differences later. Now let's perform the scan of the same Linux server with a user having higher privilege. So let's initiate the scan again. Let me click on this, rerun the scan. Let's change the name. Let's initiate the scan. Let the scan complete. The scan has now been completed. Let's see the results. Here we can see the host has been discovered successfully. Let's see the results. Let's scroll down. Here, if you might have noticed, now we are getting the serial number, UUID and other details. Now let's go ahead and check the difference. Let's click on action and click on view history. This is the page where you can see the discovered data, where we have now discovered more data than before. As we go down, we can see more data has been discovered on the right hand side. We can see the serial number, UUID and physical RAM is one of them. If you scroll down and see, there are a lot of details that is discovered. So with this demo, we can conclude that having a higher permission can help us in enriching the data for a discovery of the server. And here is the documentation which talks about the methods that require privileges. As we have scanned the Linux server, let's have a look at the Linux server details. As you can see in the list on the right hand side, it will show us which all methods are requiring the privileges. Furthermore, we have another documentation that is talking about the privileged commands that requires the super user privileges. So for this one, we would need the sudo access, and these commands can be added in the sudoers files of the Linux server. for which you can involve your Linux team to help you in adding these commands to the sudoers files. Now let's move on to the next demo, that is about software versioning mechanism. Many of the times we have seen that the software instances are discovered successfully, however the product version is missing for them. This leads to the incomplete data and it overall impacts the support details as well. So let's go ahead and see a use case where the SI whose version is missing, and simultaneously we will understand how the software versioning works, and this would help us in fixing the version problem and enriching the software instance data. Let's begin. I've picked one Windows server where I've configured its credential. Let's go ahead and scan this Windows server. Let's initiate the scan. Now the scan is completed. Let's see the results. Let's click on the host and we can see that 9 software instances has been created or discovered. Let's click on them. As we can see, there are 9 software instances discovered, and if you have noticed, for one of the software instance, which is Microsoft SQL Server Agent, the product version is missing. However, for the other ones, the product version has been discovered successfully. Before going on to the missing one, let's first see for the working one, that is for MS SQL Server, how the product version has been discovered. So this will help us to understand how the software mechanism works. Please note that for each of the software instance, the software versioning mechanism or the approach could be different. So let's go ahead and see that. I'll be clicking on the Microsoft SQL Server, and as we can see, the version has been discovered. So here is the discovery content reference page, which is also called as Configipedia page. So this page gives us the overall detail or detailed information about how the software versioning works. So let's go ahead and have a look at this one. So this is the page for Microsoft SQL Server. Let's go ahead and click on versioning. As we can see, a detailed information has been given on how the versioning works. So for us, we have scanned the Windows server, so we will look into this particular section. As we can see, there are different methods to get the version details. The first or the primary method is active versioning, where we run the WMI query and see if that particular detail is discovered or if we have retrieved the version details. For example, if this particular method hasn't worked, it goes to the fallback versioning, which is registry versioning, when it looks into this particular registry. However, just in case if this does not work, then it goes to the third versioning, which is the package versioning, and looks into this particular package to get the version details. Let's go back to the host and understand which versioning method has been used to get the version detail of this particular software instance. Let's go to its discovery access and see which method has been used to get the version details. Let's click on discovery access. Let's go ahead and see the first method, which is active versioning, where it should have run the WMI query. Here we can see there are 5 failures. Let's click on those 5 failures. And as you can see on the first method, this particular WMI query has been failed with no access method. So as per the documentation, the first method has not worked. Let's see if the second method has worked. So let's go back to this particular page. Let's go back to discovery access and scroll down and look for the registry method. Now let's click on the other method, which is get registry value method. Here, if we click on this one, we will see a lot of registry values has been tried. Let's look for the version that we were looking for. As we can see, the current version is here. Let's click on here and we can see this particular registry has been used to get the version detail. Alternatively, we can also find out which method has been used to get the version details. So let's go back to that software instance. Let's click on the MS SQL Server. On the right hand side, just click on Show Provenance and go to the section where we have identified the product version. As you can see, the method that has been used to get the version detail is registry value method. If you click here, we will be able to understand that this particular registry key was looked upon to get the version details. So here we understood that as the first method failed, which is the active versioning failed, and that is why it went to the fallback method, which is the registry method, and we were able to get the version details. And as we have got the version detail, it will not try the next method. Now let's go back to the software instance again. I will just hide this provenance. Now let's have a look at the MS SQL server agent. Here we can see the version is empty. So let's understand how the versioning of this particular software instance is retrieved. Let's click on this software instance, and from here let's click on the discovery content reference page. Now we are on the product content reference page of Microsoft SQL agent. Let's first understand how we obtain the version details for this particular software instance. Let's scroll down and have a look at the section where it gives us the details. So here is the section which says how we can obtain the version, that is the commands that are executed by the pattern to obtain the version. So as we have scanned the windows, let's have a look at the windows. So for Windows, this particular command is executed. Let's go back to the discovery appliance and let's see the output of this particular command. Let's go on the appliance, click on the host. Let's go to its discovery access and scroll down to the run commands, and we can see there are 5 failures, script failures. Let's click on them. As we can see, the third method, which is for SQL agent, it has failed with no access method. Let's click on that. And as we can see, this has failed. It means that the user that is configured to discover this particular software instance does not have the permission to execute this command. So to fix this particular command issue, we will need to involve the server team to understand why this command has failed and provide the required permissions to execute this particular command. Also, as this particular command has not been succeeded and the version has not been discovered, because of that, the support detail for this particular software server agent has not been discovered. So let's go ahead and have a quick look on that. So as you can see, the support details are also missing. So basically, whenever the version is missing, the support details will not be discovered. So we will talk more on that in our next demo. Please note that sometimes the version is discovered, but it could be an incorrect version. So those scenarios could be possible when the primary method has failed and the fallback method may have been used where the version details are not accurately captured. So in such scenario, it is recommended to understand why the primary method has failed and accordingly take the next actions. Additionally, there is one document called as command matrix that contains the list of the commands that are being executed via pattern. So here is how you can get this document. Click on the first result. So it will give us this results, and this is the document or the Excel sheet that I was talking about. I have already downloaded that. So here is the list of those commands that are being used in the pattern. So it does also contain the storage patterns as well. So let's start with this demo, that is resolving missing support details. So support details are reliant on the product versions. So once the product versions are discovered, then the related support detail pattern will also trigger. Otherwise it will not. So let's pick the same example of Microsoft SQL agent where the version is empty and we can take it from there. So let's go back to the appliance. So here I have made the changes to the user. We should allow discovery to execute the command that should bring the version details. So let's perform the rescan again. The scan has now been completed. Let's click on the results. As we can see, the host has been discovered. Let's quickly go to the software instance list. Here we can see now we are getting the version details. So let's go into this particular software instance and check if the support details are discovered. As we can see, the product version has been discovered, and due to which the software support details are also discovered. Let's have a look at the pattern that has brought the support detail information for this particular software. Let's click on the SI support detail, and from here we can just click on show provenance, click on the pattern. So this is the pattern where it will show us the list of all the software instances for which we have the support details, and the pattern module contains the details of the EOS and UL details. So from this demo, we can conclude that for the support details to be discovered, it is necessary to have the product version of the software instances. This is how we can enrich the data for the software instance. Now let's move on to the next demo. So there is a misconception that when we scan a Windows server, let's say a database is running on that Windows server, and if we perform a scan of that Windows server, all the details of the database will be discovered. So it's a misconception. There is a database discovery, which is a deep or extended database discovery, where we can get additional details. For this, we need to create the additional database credentials, which discovery will use and perform the extended database discovery. Please note that for the extended database discovery, we need the JDBC drivers of that respective database. So let's start with the demo. In this demo, I will pick the last Windows server because it does contains the MS SQL database server. So I will not scan it again. We will review the last result of this particular Windows scan. Let's click on this Windows, click on the host, and then click on the 9 software instances related. Let's go to the Microsoft SQL server. With the software instance, there are databases that are also discovered. Let's click on one of the database. So we can see here a few details has been discovered for the database, but not all details are discovered. So for that, we need to perform the extended database discovery. To do so, by default, the extended database patterns are not enabled. Hence, we first need to enable those patterns. Let's go and click on this particular pattern. And if we scroll down, we need to click on the extended pattern. I've already edited this particular pattern configuration where I have changed the value to true from false, and I have saved the changes. Now let's check the credentials. Manage credentials. Here I had already created one credential. Let's go into action and enable it. Let's go inside this credential and see the details. So this is the database credentials that we have created for Microsoft SQL Server. We have given the credentials. Please note that for Microsoft SQL Server database, JDBC driver is inbuilt, so we don't need to install it again. However, there are other databases for which we need to upload the JDBC drivers separately. Let's click on apply. Now the credentials are enabled. Let's go back to manage and discovery, and let's perform the scan again. Please note that for extended database discovery, it might take a little more time than a normal discovery. The scans have now been completed. Let's look at the results. Click on the host. Let's first go to its discovery access just to confirm if the database credentials are being picked up by discovery. Let's click on the discovery access. As we can see here, the database credentials are also being picked by discovery. Now let's go ahead and see the results of the database. Click on 9 software instances. Let's go to the Microsoft SQL Server. Let's click on one of the SQL database server. As we can see here, the additional details are being discovered. that is 370 database details related have been discovered. So now we are getting a more enriched data as compared to the previously discovered data. With this, we can conclude that having an extended database discovery will enrich your database discovery data. Now let's move on to the last part of the webinar, that is best practices, recommendations, and the importance of TKU updates. First one, scanning the targets with the user having higher privilege would help in getting more enriched data as compared to the low level user. As we discussed earlier, you can refer the command matrix sheet to understand the permissions required for the commands in the patterns, and also the documentation that we also referred for the Linux based servers. Many of the times it has happened that the latest TKUs are applied, however, the expected details are not captured. This can be mainly due to the customizations done on the TKU patterns. In addition to that, there could be a customization on the platform scripts that could hamper the richness of the data. Hence, as part of the best practices, you can review the platform scripts, and for software instances related use cases, you can review the respective patterns and confirm if the latest pattern is active or no, in case you are not getting the correct data. Alternatively, you can disable the customizations temporarily and perform the scans with the latest updates and confirm if the required details are discovered successfully. Furthermore, regarding the TKUs, it's always recommended to be on the latest TKUs, SKUs, as it contains the defect fixes, enhancements, or the support of new softwares, network devices. This will help you in maintaining the richness of the data. Thank you for watching.